get ready for boards, because I believe that we can change the world by adding the strength of women and diversity to the boards and improving the return on investment. So return on investment can be a black and white number, right? It's a percentage. It's calculated. It's in the accounting. But what is going on behind that? What does that reflect? Any ideas? When your company's doing better, what do you think is going on behind the scenes? Better decisions. Diversity. Yeah. What do you think about culture? Think the culture's better? Think you have better retention? You think you have happier customers? Think you have happier shareholders? Probably a higher shareholder price, a higher share price also in your stock. So to me, return on investment, as it goes up like that, it has a lot behind it that's reflecting the kinds of things we want. We want to work in companies where we have a better culture, where we feel good, where we like the people we work with, where we like the things that we're doing in our job. As board members, our fiduciary duty is to act on behalf of the company and the shareholders. I want happy shareholders. I don't want an activist shareholder calling me or trying to sue me because they're unhappy with the performance of the company or the performance of the management, or that we, fouled some piece of land somewhere. That is not what I want. I want them to be satisfied, not dissatisfied, not disappointed. I don't want a lower price on my stock, okay? So does that all make sense? Okay, great. So at the current pace for women to reach parity with men on boards in Fortune 500 companies, so this is just a sector of the marketplace, is by 2032, if we keep going at the pace we're going. And it's slow. So let's take a look at the statistics. These are going to be statistics that I found over the last 2 years. So they may have moved some, but I keep close eye on these, and they haven't moved enough for me to change them significantly, okay? So the percentage of women on boards overall in the United States, so this is small public company to major company, is 16.6%. So you're saying, well, it's almost 1 in 5. And at the same time, it hasn't moved. Like, I've been on boards for 13 years, and the percentages have gone maybe from 13% to 16%. Come on. Really? That's ridiculous. The percentage of women on boards in Canada is a little better. It's about 20%. Okay? Women make up just 6% of blue chip CEOs. Why is that important? Well, it's important because the standard matrix that boards look for when they're wanting to recruit another board member has been, in the past, they want to recruit CEOs. Well, I guarantee you that these women who are in this 6%, they're either on 3 or 4 boards or they've been invited to 3 or 4 boards. They're overboarded, what we call overboarded. And they get tapped a lot. The only way they're going to move on to another board is if it's a better board. They're going to leave one and move to another one. Okay, let's talk about Colorado. We're kind of at the bottom of the list. I hate to say it, but we are not doing well here. Okay, in Colorado's F1000, we have 11.5% women on boards. So there's a ranking of all the states that have public companies that are in this sector. There are 24 states. We're number 23. Oklahoma is behind us. That's not okay, right? So this one just slays me. Colorado energy companies, so that includes mining, oil and gas, alternative energy, that whole sector, only 5% are women on those boards. Bad. That's bad. Okay? So there's lots of opportunity though, right? 95%. We can change that number. So I did the math. I'm an analyst, so I sat down. I said, well, how long is this going to take? When I was doing my research, we need about 323 to 646 women on boards in Colorado to reach 50%. And that number comes from, the low number, the 323, comes from replacing seats that are already in existence. So if all the boards kept the same number of board members that they have today, and they just traded out a woman for a man and did the gender balance to 50%, we need 323 women on those seats, yes.
Is this Colorado companies, like jurisdiction-wise, or just operating in Colorado? Because like I imagine there's a lot operating here, there, Delaware.
Right, there are a lot. So this, I think the way that they did this was companies that are actually Colorado registered companies, is my guess, is how that came out. The 646 is actually the number of women we'd have to have on the board if we just added women to bring it to parity, right? So we changed the number of seats on the board. So if you have a company that has 5 board seats and they're all male and they add 5 more, then they have 50%. So that's how we get the number of 646 women. Now, keep in mind that board seats isn't like a regular job. These are very rare. They only come up, sporadically. This isn't the type of thing that there's term limits. There's, if once you get a gig like this, it's a good gig, and most people don't want to leave. So let's take a look at this. So the percentage of men in the C-suite, 95.1%. Okay, that's pretty close. The percentage of men named John in the C-suite, 4.7%. Percentage of women in the C-suite is less than the CEOs that are named John. So it's way out of balance. This is one of my favorite pictures. Anybody remember the Fearless Girl? So this was commissioned actually by a couple of major institutional investor firms. And I love Wall Street because that's my background. I love the markets. I love public companies. And so to see the Fearless Girl standing in front of the bull is awesome. It's like, I'm here too. And as our famous friend, Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, women belong in all the places where decisions are being made. And I agree. And she's proven to be very effective. So one of the things that I've learned over the last year of doing this work of training other women to get on boards is that what I've learned from the women is they may have this in their mind where they're coming in going, I want to get on a corporate board. And after they go through the training, they realize, wait a second, I want to be in the C-suite. Or maybe I should be a politician. The point is that they want to be in positions of power where they are at the very top of the echelon making decisions that are going to affect their communities, their shareholders, their investors. It's really participating at the highest level. So there may be other labels there. We're just talking about corporate boards today, but I'm in support of all of those things. So how do we get all the women that we need to be ready to get onto corporate boards? Because there are gaps. So how did I get to this place of believing that maybe it was a good idea to help other women? I could have gone on my way in my career, sat on 3 or 4 boards, taken that pay, and been perfectly fine, right? And yet, when I saw all those statistics, the more I dug, the more I realized that there's something missing. So I started interviewing women. And to be honest with you, my Rolodex over the 30 years has really been made of men in my career who've been very supportive. I have male mentors who've helped me along the way. And also in male-dominated industries, in finance and in mining. So I got used to being an anomaly, to being the one that stands out, and to be included, though. I've always had that opportunity to be included along the way, which has been very good. So I was curious about what's going on with women in other sectors. So I set up coffees and lunches and dinners, and I interviewed 200 women. I asked them, why aren't there more women on boards? Why aren't you on a board? And what happened in your career? Like, what's your story? Where were you headed? Did anything get in your way? What was it that got in your way? And through those interviews, what I found out is there were 200 stories, and we're all different. Some of them are similar. I couldn't, people would say, well, so what's the common denominator? I said, I don't have the answer for you because everyone is unique in their experience. But what I did come away with is the fact that I recognize that there are gaps that most women have in their careers, which I didn't have. The gaps of being mentored, the gaps of being included, the gaps of not being brought along, the gaps of being kind of shut out, either on their own, like sometimes women choose out, and then they think they can't come back in. So we have more complexities usually than men because we're the ones that are making the babies. We're the ones that are making the home. We're the ones that are taking care of spouses or family members or whatever, because we have this nature in us around taking care of. So how do we do it all? How do we get it all in? Well, you live a long time and you work really hard and you do as much as you can all at once. But you can't do everything at once, right? You have to choose. And it's okay to choose. I'm going to opt in, I'm going to opt out, but keeping your toe in the water all the time. Keeping in touch with those people through your career that are really supportive of you, what I call champions, because you can come back to them over and over and they can help you to get to the next level that you want to get to. So if you're thinking about getting on a board seat, we need you. We really do. Okay, so let's take a minute. I gave you guys have handouts, and we do have people online. The online people, the questionnaire, the quiz questionnaire is an e-doc, and you should be able to fill that in and then just hit submit, and it would be sent right to my inbox. So if you would take the time to fill in this questionnaire, it's a brief 13 questions, yes, no, or maybe, and then put your name. Please write legibly, because I'm going to collect these, and give me your email address. And what I will do is I'll collect all of these and score them, and then give you your scores back to you sometime in the next week. Good. Well, thanks for coming. Yeah. All right. Okay. Spread the word. Done with those. If you want to pass them out, hand them to me. Thank you. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Let's talk about money. Why do we want to be on boards? It isn't always about money, but some people don't know about the money part. Oh, thank you. Couple more. Thank you. Thank you. And I think that's everybody. Okay. All right. So, let's see here. I'm trying to get this to go. So how did I get, like what's the whole thing around being on a board in my mind and how I was mentored? So I watched my male mentors go up the corporate ladder and then get on 3 or 4 boards and retire out and go skiing and travel and play golf. And they're making 6 figures. Plus they have stock options. So yeah, so we're talking most average, if they're on 3 or 4 boards, they're $500,000 and up. For a part-time job, yeah, with your buddies and going fishing. Could you guys help me forward this because it's not working? There we go. Okay. Let's look at what your time commitment is. So depending on what size of a company you're going to be joining, this gives you an idea of how many hours you would expect to put in. So I personally what happens is when I'm on a new board, it's a lot more intense. The hours are a lot more demand. You have a lot more paperwork to read before your meetings. You meet quarterly and then 1 annual meeting. That's your standard public company commitment. And then you also have board meetings in between for anything that comes up. They decide to do some kind of merger or acquisition. They need to get a financing. If they're going to sell off an asset, the kinds of things that boards of directors need to approve, then they're going to call you together to convene, but it could usually be on the phone. It doesn't have to be in person, depending on the size of the company. There are a lot more small and mid-tier companies than there are big companies. And if you look at the statistics for the bigger companies, they're better. So look at Newmont Mining here in Colorado. They're actually our #1 company. They have 5 women on their board. One of them is the chair of the board, and they have 9 members. So they're pretty much at par. No, I think they have 12 members, sorry. Yeah, so but they have more women and the highest percentage of any company in Colorado that's publicly traded. So kind of a surprise. But when you go down the food chain in the mining industry, that's not the case, because remember we saw for the energy sector, only 5% are women on boards in that sector. So all the smaller companies still have a lot of room to add women to their boards. So the compensation average in 2017 was $379,084. So that's the 100 largest companies in the USA. So that's the top, right? To give you an idea of like your market cap and average annual comp as the sizes go down, on the companies you can see that it gets into the lower 6 figures. The boards that I sit on are under this level. Our compensation is typically a lower amount of cash and a lot of stock options, which helps to retain the capital in the company. And that's a good thing because you want them to have the capital, working capital. These are another example of the pay scales that are by company size and type. All right. So all the ones on the top are public. Now, when we get to the micro caps, which are the smaller companies, it can vary. So those of you who are looking, let's say that you're really entrepreneurial and you belong to some of these tech groups, and you know somebody who's got a startup, and they're looking for advice, and they know that you've got the expertise, so they ask you. So your compensation in a situation like that might be equity only, because they may not have a lot of working capital. In fact, a lot of the startups have board members who are investors. So let's say that you put $10,000 into that particular startup because you really believe in it, you think there's a big future. You may be significant enough in the investment pool where you could say, hey, I'd like to sit on the advisory board and also help in that way. So you could invest, you could also get stock from the company for sitting on the board. So there can be a little bit of creativity here in the way that things are structured. When you're looking at a large publicly traded company, it's all public information. You can find out what the compensation package is for boards on publicly traded companies. So that piece is, you can Google. Private companies, not so much. Private companies, it's very hard to get statistics. There's really no centralized point. They're not required to file publicly, so we may not have their financials and we may not know what they're paying and who's on their boards. So let's go into this, this other, does anybody have any questions where we're at right now? No? Okay. So one of the exercises that I have my ladies go through is around what is your authority. And there are a number of things that I walk the ladies through when I do my training. And the reason I do that is because what I've learned in my interview process with people one-on-one is that everyone has these superpowers. Everyone has something special. Everyone has overcome something in their career along the way. And it could even be related to their personal life. And yet they've achieved, and now they're trying to achieve more. And you know what we're used to? We're used to getting one thing done, and we check it off, and we move to the next. And we go to the next thing, and we go to the next. Years of doing that get us into a mode where we have like amnesia about how great we are and how awesome the things are that we've accomplished. Remember how hard it was when you first set out to do that first goal? And by the time you got there, you were like, okay, that's great. But you'd already put your sights on the next one. So one of the things that I do is help people remember and shine a light on what it is that is your authority. What it is that's really special about you. When you do a board resume is completely different than your employee resume, than your professional resume, than what you're looking for a job. We're looking for skills and experiences that are going to relate to your board. Okay? So those vary, and they vary on your background. So understanding what your authority is very important for you, not for me, but for you. So that when you show up and represent yourself in your elevator pitch, or when you're meeting with somebody for a coffee, it's really important to understand where your confidences are. What are you an expert in? Are you a subject matter expert? Like you ladies that are doing the international. So I'm assuming that that's not the norm for everybody. So everyone has a specialty that's here. So how do you highlight that specialty? What does that mean? And that can just be in one section of your life. So where does your authority come from? Okay? So I want you to take a few minutes and look at your piece of paper here. There's some instructions on there. And if I can find mine, I can read it to you. But I can't find it. Here we go. So people look up to authority, right? And if you think of it in terms of, oh, that's only for the boss, not true. So let's take a situation where you're going to a high school football game and you're pulling into the parking lot and all of a sudden somebody crunches into somebody else and they block up the whole parking lot. So people can't get in, they're trying to park, they're trying to get to the game, and the line is going down the street, right? So everyone's in their car, there's a big dilemma, what are we gonna do? And all of a sudden, a young person jumps out of the car, runs up to the front, and starts directing people. Like, you, come here, go that way. You, come here, you go that way. You, come here, you go that way. That person has just taken on authority, right? So our authority is something that can live inside of us that helps us in a decision-making process when it's critical, not only to help ourselves, but to help other people. So are there times in your life when you've done that, or even things that you've thought about, I could step in here and I could really help? In the mining industry, I run into a lot of women who are engineers and who, are really, really on the bandwagon of sustainability. I want to make a big difference. I want to clean up our sites. I want to make sure that we're functioning in the best way possible, to extract these resources from the earth and to take care of the communities and all the people that we're disrupting in order to get all of these things out of the earth. So their authority comes from that passion. I bet you have passion about something, right? So write down some of your ideas on authority. Think about your own experiences and any adversity that you've gone through. What challenges have you faced and survived? Think of your past jobs, your school, and your life. Okay? So let's see what time it is. Ooh, okay, it's 20 till. So we're going to allow some time for Q&A. But what I'd like you to do is take about 5 minutes and jot down like first answer, best answer, right? Like don't talk yourself out of anything. If it's coming to the front, put it down. Okay, 2 more minutes. Looks like everybody's pretty much done. So now what I'd like you to do is pair up with somebody, and I want you to share something about your authority that you learned about yourself. Okay? And we're just going to do that like 2.5 minutes with each person. So I think there's an even number in here for. No, there's one extra, right? So, yeah, so you two can pair up and you two can pair up. And how about you pair with the person in the last row and then the three of you together? Okay, great. Perfect. Don't be shy. This is part of your, yeah. Okay, so 30 seconds and we'll switch. So I don't know if the people online can pair.
I paired them.
Oh, you
in the
did?
Chat, and they're
Okay.
doing it over Jabber, which is our internal chat.
Great. Perfect. You're ahead of me. Okay, so let's switch, if you haven't already, to the other person. Are you done? You did it. Okay. We still have 2 minutes. Okay, 1 more minute. Okay. Okay, let's wrap it up. Maybe 10 more seconds. And Lead, do we have the handheld mic, just in case? Good. So, we have a few minutes here, so I would love it if somebody would be brave enough, a couple of you, to share a little bit about what you learned about your authority, or want to share what your authority is with the group. So, any volunteers? Don't be shy. Come on. Okay, great, perfect. Tell us your name.
My name, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Volunteer for this.
All right,
Okay.
that's okay.
My name is Angelique Carter, and I think I'll just keep it short, that I'm a natural leader, that I like to just take charge and sort of direct chaos if it's there. So, and then I also put that I can easily make a plan, and accomplish a goal, like a long-term goal. I'm really good at sort of planning and executing on a goal. And I put some adversity that I sort of overcome is I'm usually the only woman of color in most rooms that I'm in, and I usually can win people over to get them to trust me or put me in charge of something. Every time I'm usually able to do that, even though I'm the one person. So.
Good. That's perfect. So the first part is your leadership piece, is the doing, right?
Yeah.
So that's your role in your experience. When you're in a board role, you're not doing. You're overseeing. So it's an umbrella over the corporate group. So the board in a public company sits above the CEO and the C-suite, all of the C-level executives. And it's, again, their fiduciary duty to act on behalf of the company and the shareholders. And so the second part that you talked about, where you're good at planning and that type of thing, those are board skills, okay? So the experience matters because you want to have people who are in charge who've been through the trenches and get it, right? They had to have fought some battles. But when you get into the board role, you really are in the planning part of it. You're not the doing part. And then the last piece is helping people to feel comfortable in a room. That's a huge skill, whether you're a person of color or whether you're in a different gender, whatever the uniqueness is about you, when you're in a group that's homogenized and very collegial. Because guess what? We may feel uncomfortable, but they can feel really uncomfortable. They're used to, especially if you're in an all-male dominated room, they're used to being able to act like it's a locker room. So when the first woman steps in, it changes that. And sometimes they don't like that. And there's pushback. And there's, what people say to me is the first woman on a board, the board members are still kind of telling jokes and da-da-da-da-da. When there's two women that join the board, they actually don't do that as much. And when there are three women on the board, they get manners. So it shifts the culture a lot in how we behave with each other when the genders are in the room together. Just on that basis. We're not even going into the intellect. We're talking about just the culture at that point. So thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to share? Here we go.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I think I realized that my authority comes from being able to spot issues and not be afraid to speak my mind, even if it's a really unpopular opinion, especially coming from a very male-dominated field also, where you're already kind of an outlier, and also was the only associate in a group of 15 partners, all men. So, and was able to actually change some of the policies of not only the organization to get the job that I wanted that wasn't possible before, but also for some of our clients to get more business for the firm, also avoid liability, and then changing the culture of the firm to better serve the clients by having information sharing between the groups and things like that didn't exist prior to me coming there.
So it sounds to me like you're good at kind of standing back and taking, you're take everything in. Is that true?
Yeah.
And then you can assess it, and you can come up with something, but you don't just plan it. You actually can help instigate and move it forward. Yeah, okay. So all of those are really good things. That will serve you really well in that as you go into the executive suite and into a boardroom It's really important to listen to what everybody's saying. It's really important to know what's going on behind the scene. When we're in a board meeting, all the stuff has been decided before you got there. It's really about the meetings before the meetings, understanding, you know, the committees, what's happening over here, breakfast, lunches, and dinners, coffees, calls, all that kind of thing. So it's really important as you join boards to have the ability to sit back and take it all in, and at the same time, it's so important to have your own voice. Like sitting in the first 3 meetings and just listening is not going to work. Your silence speaks volumes. It says, I'm judging you. It says, I'm paying attention, but I don't have anything that I think I can offer. It sends all kinds of messages that you don't want to have sent out about you. So although it's hard, the very first meeting that you're in, it's important to say something. And the men are the same. I can tell you I've been in boards with brand new guys that come in, and I've seen them behave the same way. First meeting in, they're just sitting in the corner, taking it all in, scared to death. Like, oh my God, what did I just get into? Because you're stepping into this river that's already running. And no matter what you read, how many materials you go over, and how many meetings you have, you still have to get into it yourself before you're going to get in the flow. So just some tips. But thank you. Thanks for all playing that. I hope that you learned a little bit about yourself, and you'll take that forward from here. Like this can be a learning for you going forward of how you stand and who you are as you go through your day, as you meet people, as you talk to your boss, as you boss your employees, et cetera, et cetera. It's so exciting. All right. So what do we have next? Okay. Again, my favorite fearless girl. You'll see her on my website because I use her a lot. Know the power of women in leadership. So we've talked a little bit about that already. And my board training, just to give you an idea of what that is, in case you're interested or you know someone who may be a board candidate, it's an 8-week program. I only offer it twice a year. I'm training women in the US and in Canada. To date, I've trained 32 women. I have 32 graduates from the US and Canada in all kinds of backgrounds. And I have a number of women who are already in board interviews as we speak. And I have a couple who are in CEO interviews. So I have one that looks like that says she's going into politics. I have one lady, 37 years old, who started her own private public company on the Vancouver, the Venture Exchange in Toronto. So she raised $200,000 and started a shell, and she's working to merge some mining assets into that shell. So everybody comes up with a different way to affect the world. And I think we're going to continue to see some shifts of movement in all kinds of directions from these graduates and what they're going to achieve. But my goal is to train 1,000 women. So I covered board governance, how to get on boards, what it's like to be on a board, and financial acumen. How many of you are really good in finance? Okay, good. That'll serve you well. For those of you who are not, don't worry. I mean, a board matrix should have skills in every category. Marketing, branding, manufacturing, depends on what the company does, okay? And so here we go. I want to train 1,000 women. I've got 32 done, so that leaves 968. And I'm ready to go. I want to get it done in 10 years. This is my first year. So the clock is ticking, and we need you. If it's something that you're thinking about, I seriously just ask you to keep pursuing it. Keep doing your homework. Asking around, like what's out there. You can Google all this stuff, like what's out there for women board training. When I did my homework, there were 2 programs, Harvard and Kellogg. And guess what? You had to be a CEO to go. Their application requirement was to be a CEO of a company. That leaves out 99% of us. Another reason why I felt really compelled to do this work, to share my story, to open up, what it's like to be in the boardroom and share that with other women so that they can learn how to do that. So that's it. Any questions? Yes.
What are your thoughts on hiring for, I should say, whether it's a board member or being hired for the best person versus looking at diversity? And we've had speakers come in and say, I got called to be on the board, and they mentioned specifically because I was a woman, so I was being called, and like, I don't want to be on the board. I don't want to be chosen for the board just because I'm a woman. I want to be chosen because I should be there regardless. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on kind of that anecdote and how you approach those situations.
Right. So I've heard that too. And we don't want to say yes to everything. You've got to do your homework. You want to make sure it's a legitimate company. You're going to do your background checks. They're going to do their background checks. If you're letting that gender issue get in your way for accepting an opportunity like that, I say shame on you. I have women who say, I don't want to be a token woman. I'm like, I'll take a token woman all day long, because we got to get one before we get two, before we get three. And I hate to say it, but in my generation, we fought our way to get where we are, and it ain't over. We got to keep fighting. It isn't easy. It isn't fair. And you might be the token. And at the same time, it's this opportunity. You are opening doors for yourself and for other people to help them come along. And so I highly doubt that a company, I have not run into a company that says, I just want a woman. Just get me a woman. In fact, they scrutinize way more to get the woman than they do any of their guys, if that makes sense. They have a longer list of skills. Guess what? We need to know more, do more, have more, all that stuff in order to make it into the same box that our male counterparts are going to get into. It's just the way it is. So I have a different take on that. So if somebody asks you if you want to be on a board, say, I'd love to consider it. Who is it? What do we do? Let's start the conversation. And then dive in and see if it works. Does that help? Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Do you know kind of the average age of people on boards, like men or women?
So the question is, what's the average age of men or women on boards? If you're over 50, your chances are better. Okay? If you're 80, you've probably been on the board a while, but they're not going to kick you out for the most part. I mean, really. It's just unbelievable. Some of these. So, are there 80-year-olds who are viable and who have value to bring to the board? Absolutely. But again, you want to make sure, and I would say that the companies need to evaluate. So one of the things that we're required to do is a self-evaluation of the board every year. Okay, so in that evaluation, we need to consider, do we have, George is over there napping through half the board meeting. That's not good. If they're not participating, they need to go. And I'll tell you, it's a lot of work. And you have to be ready, like 24/7. So I don't think that, but the ageism is going to be more towards younger people. And I would challenge companies, because we have cybersecurity, we have blockchain, we have all of these really serious things coming down the pike. And if it's all 75-year-old white guys, their exposure to this stuff is minimal. Look at the congressional hearings with Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook and the questions that they asked. It was like, oh my God, we're really screwed. We need to have that voice in the boardroom to help us understand these things, that these are disruptive things that can hit any industry. It's not just one. So I'm teaching women from their 30s to their 70s. I'm not discriminatory. And you don't have to be a CEO. I want women who have authority, who want to make a difference, who have a passion about something, and who want to be in a leadership role to make a difference. Those are the people I'm looking for to train. And then I push. I'm their cheerleader. You can tell. I kind of have a little bit of that personality, right? Once they're in with me, then I'm supportive, I'm cheerleading, I'm introducing, I'm setting them into their uncomfortable zone. They hate me because I do, let's hear your elevator pitch. And I pull it out and make that happen. That's so uncomfortable. So many people have a hard time with that. Networking, oh my God, we got to go to another event, But those are the ways that you get into boards. It's who you know. It's not just what you know, it's who you know. How do you work it? Where does it come from? I literally got on this last board. I would just joined a board November 6th. I was at a conference in September, walked up to a booth, said, what's that product? Talked to the CEO. Within 15 minutes, he said, I'm going to follow my intuition. I need a board member who's got great board governance. Would you be interested? I was floored. I was like, this never happens. How did this happen? And 6 weeks later, I'm on the board. He's a 33-year-old CEO, and he needs experienced people. And I'm also connected to the same market he is, and it's a fun company. It's a gold investment jewelry company, so I'm wearing some of it today. 24-karat gold and platinum. And you buy your gold jewelry at spot plus like 20%, and you can always sell it back to the company. They guarantee to buy it back at the spot price less 10%. So it's truly investment jewelry. Very cool. Are we done? We're done? No. Well, thank you.
Stick around to answer more questions personally, though. I'm sure Michelle will be willing to
Yeah.
talk for a few minutes.
Absolutely. But thank you so much for coming, and thank you to everybody online that hopefully I'll get to connect with after I get their scores done. And go forth. Change the world. We love you.